Hello there, and welcome to episode 7 of Live from Vaders Castle. I'm your host, Dan McCrory, and I'm joined by my co-host, John Lee.
Hello there.
How are you doing today, John?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a good news day for me. My local area in Scotland has just been dropped down a level in our COVID restrictions, so it'll be all parties up here.
You'll love to see it.
Yeah, we've been held behind because we were dirty and got lots of COVID, but it's all gone away now. Now we're back to normal.
Well, like the rest of England.
Well, yeah, not quite normal, but it's like the rest of the UK, exactly. But apart from that, it's chucking it down with rain. It's a bit minging up here. I'm assuming it's the same with you.
Yes, the wind is dreadful down here. I can see the trees in the window behind me are edging ever so closer to falling over.
Yeah, well, it's this good British summer that we should be looking forward to.
Yeah, it's 21st of May. This is get your barbecues out.
I know, shocking. Right, so on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the newest episode of The Bad Batch, episode 4, called Cornered. And it was a little bit of a lighter episode in terms of content and stuff to speak about. So we're going to have a little segment at the end, talk about some Lightsaber Duels as well from the whole Star Wars franchise. So we've got a little bit of a breakdown review and then something extra to tag on the end, a little bit of fun at the end of the episode. Are you excited for that, John?
Yeah, it'll be a nice, interesting discussion, I think, to discuss some of the interesting lightsaber fights in the show, in this whole series.
Yeah, still waiting for some lightsaber fights in the Bad Batch. Well, I guess we kind of got one, didn't we, with Order 66? But
yeah, true.
They weren't dueling. They were just sort of trying not to die.
Yeah.
So what did you think of today's episode, John?
It was okay. It was there was some new character was added, but I feel like it was very as we've said in previous episodes, I feel like there was times when it was a bit slow, but it was necessary to further information and stuff like that. I feel like that wasn't quite as prevalent today. I think it was just a bit slower without the background stuff that we've been discussing in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I agree. I liked the episode enough. I thought it was fine. It sort of fits into the realm of the episodes of Clone Wars and Rebels where they're sort of not that significant. You forget about them fairly quickly, but they're fun to sort of watch. Like, it was a fun episode. But you know how a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the whole thing with people saying, stuff's filler? Now, I can actually almost see the argument for people calling this episode filler because with the exception of, the new addition to the show, we didn't actually learn a huge amount more about any of the characters, really. Didn't massively further the plot in a huge way. It just was a bit of a fun 20 minutes that was perhaps a little bit more kid-friendly than the first 3 episodes. Yeah, that's sort of my overall thoughts.
I mean, I think one of the, obviously apart from the new character introduction, I think the most interesting point I took away from it was Tech being able to scramble the code on the ship, and we learn how he does that. So I'm assuming that's like the same method that like the Ghost uses and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that was the most interesting piece I took away from it.
And if anything, that was the sort of the most significant plot development going into the next episode. Is now the Empire can't track their ship. But apart from that, and apart from the fact they've got a new bounty hunter on their tail, not a huge amount changed, if I'm being honest. But it's fine. I think there will be people who will be disappointed. But I think if you've watched the Clone Wars and Rebels, you've come to expect episodes like this every now and then.
Yeah.
I always think back to Rebels when there was season 1 when there's all the sorts going on with the Inquisitor and Agent Callus and all this. And then there was just an episode where they tried to collect fruit on Lothal and then got involved in a TIE fighter chase because they were collecting fruit. And it was one of those episodes where you're like, what was the point of this episode? Apart from being a laugh. And I feel like this one sort of kind of fit into that category as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's not a lot to sink your teeth into this episode. It is just, I think it's just one of those ones where it was just a fun little thing where, there was some cool cool scenes, cool characters,
some cool set pieces going on.
Cool set pieces, but nothing that has really furthered anything to any prevailing interest.
As soon as I saw the description that it was that the Bad Batch were going on a supply run, I was like, oh my God, it's a supply run episode. Because every episode of Rebels that was forgettable was a supply run episode. It was always. So as soon as I saw supply run, I was like, right, okay, it's one of them. But it was still fun. Like I am being critical purely because, I think there's no point me and you just being like, oh, every episode's great. We've got to be honest with our, reviews and stuff. I'm sound like I'm being overly critical. I did still enjoy the episode. It was fun. It was like quite funny at times. There was some like good visuals and stuff and some interesting, as you said, scenes and set pieces. But ultimately left me looking for a little bit more. So I'm hoping next week picks up the pace a wee bit again.
Yeah, I mean, episodes like this, I think just, there's got to be a bit of rain to enjoy the sunshine. So the episodes we've had before have obviously been the better ones, and you've got to have an episode which is lacking behind but still great.
Yeah.
As a series so far, still very good.
Yeah.
Not every episode's going to be your favorite episode or like the best episode ever. So
yeah, and I do think like one of the reasons I do justify these episodes is because like part of these shows are just like getting to know the cast, like the main characters, and like being with them for an extended period of time. Now in this episode there wasn't like big character developing moments like there were in the past two, but it was just another sort of 20 minutes of spending time with the Bad Batch, which I think is important in a way because you could take this episode out and say, it's quite inconsequential. But then by the end of the series, would you be as attached to the characters if you'd spent less time with them? I guess it's, what I always say to people with Rebels when I'm like, look, just push through some of the episode of Rebels that aren't great. And it makes up for it at the end because by the time you get to the end, the characters mean so much to you that the finale really feels like something, and it wouldn't feel like something if you skipped the lesser episodes because you'd just pure numbers spend less time with the characters. So I think these episodes are justified. I just think few and far between. As long as next week bangs, I think we're fine.
Yeah, that's a great point actually. That these is why like with TV shows, like Rebels, like Clone Wars, and other TV shows and other media, is that at the end of it, in the finale, you do like have a proper emotional attachment with these characters because like you spent so much time with them, even if it's just them doing stuff that's possibly mundane. Like, you're still spending that extra half an hour with them and seeing them do things. That's a good point, to be fair.
And I think one of the things I like is I'm pretty sure this is the first time we've seen Pantora, the planet. I might be wrong with that. If I am wrong, correct me. I think this is the first time we've seen Pantora like on the actual planet. I always like it when we go to a new planet and seeing what the new cultures and the locations look like. I know that the closest we come, I think, to Pantora was, do you remember that Clone Wars arc with like the snow moon with like the towels, the little white creatures, and then like the Pantorans thought it was like wanted to claim the moon for themselves, and then the towels fought back. Like I think that moon was like orbiting Pantora or nearby.
I know the episode.
But then obviously this one we got to go to Pantora, which I think was cool. It's another planet. There's some fun little like details that we sort of learn. And then I think sort of the big thing from this episode, it was an introduction to Fennec Shand, or reintroduction to Fennec Shand, a much younger Fennec Shand, which didn't massively pay off for me in this episode, but the introduction needs to be done, so it will probably pay off further down the series. So it's good that that character is now in the mix, and it definitely leaves it at the end of the episode that we will see her again. It's not just a one-off appearance. So in that sense, there's definitely some positives to take from today's episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that they've actually introduced her like fairly early on in the series as well, because episode 4, like, if she, I feel like we're going to see her a lot more throughout the series. Like if she was introduced at like episode 10 or something, you'd assume that you're not going to get a lot out of her.
I imagine
so early in.
Yeah, I think I had always imagined it was going to be quite an antagonistic relationship between her and the Bad Batch, like she was going to be hunting them. Although we'll talk about this in more detail, it doesn't seem like Omega being her target. I don't think it's a kill she's got on Omega. I think she's to capture her alive, because sort of there were so many opportunities in that episode she could have killed Omega easily, but she was always like trying to, come with me, all that sort of stuff, like be nice to her. So I think the bounty that's on Omega's head is a capture alive, and I think it's actually the Kaminoans who's got that out, not the Empire. That's my theory.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well when I was watching it. I think it's who's that Kaminoan that she spent like a lot of time with, the top medical one? I always forget their names.
I want to say it's Nala Se. I think Nala Se is the medical one.
Yeah, like her and the Prime Minister have definitely, I think, paid her to bring her back, and because I don't think they trust the Empire with it. I don't think they trust that if the Empire was to capture Omega, I don't think they'd bring her back to the Kaminoans for sure.
Yeah,
they'd go off and do their own thing.
She probably wouldn't survive it either. So should we just we'll just get into the episode and sort of at fairly quick pace, just get through the episode, what happened, and then we can bring up these points as we go through. So the overall plot are fairly straightforward. They were running low on supplies and they needed to scramble the codes that was attached to their ship. So they landed on the nearest planet to them, which was Pantora. Pantora is known for being the home of the Pantorans, who are the blue people. They're not the Chiss because they don't have red eyes. They're tall and blue, humanoid-looking aliens. And this is their home planet. They get there. Hunter, Echo, Omega go off on a supply run. Tech and Wrecker try and fix the ship, as in get the scrambler off the ship. The little Sullustan, who runs the little port, snitches on the fact that they're there to Fennec Shand. Fennec Shand comes and tries to obtain Omega off of them, and then a chase and rescue sequence begins, and that's essentially the overrun of that episode. I guess the first little bit that I'll ask you about, John, which I thought was quite a funny moment, was when Hunter sold Echo to the little arms dealer, not the arms dealer, like the little what do you call it, like artifact guy.
Yeah, the merchant. Yeah, that made me laugh. I really liked Echo's little outfit he had on, actually, where he looked like a droid or something like that. I think he looked really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was funny actually that he disguised him as a droid.
Yeah, it makes sense because I mean, he does stand out from a crowd, and if he's going to go wandering about the streets, he needs to not look like a man with cybernetic faces and arms, etc., etc.
Yeah, and I actually quite liked his little bit with the droids as well, of like getting them to come fix the ship for them. It's quite funny.
Yeah, I was for sure thinking that at the end of the episode, after they finished fixing the ship, he was going to like start this like droid revolution, and they were going to like join him on the ship and just go off.
Well, it was going to go like full solo, and then there was just going to be a droid uprising.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Or like the three like the R2-D2 looking one, and the other ones, I thought they were going to like just turn on the C-3PO looking female droid and just like murk her and then run off on their own.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I really liked the little astromech one that had like the arms and legs.
Yes.
Like
he had little chubby arms.
Yeah, he was a bit like Chopper-like in his behaviour, but he had like the little chubby arms. I quite liked him. I almost hoped that he ended up on the ship.
Yeah.
I was a bit sad when he got left behind. I was thinking, I was wishing he was going to be one of the boys there.
Yeah, I'm hoping we come back in a later episode and like the droids have taken over that shop.
Or if they just do like a Clone Wars classic droid episode and it just goes back to that shop and it's just them for a whole episode, I'd be up for that, to be honest.
Yeah, a droid episode I think I'd enjoy.
I also quite like the fact that they put a, what do you call it, restraining bolt on Echo. The guy put an actual restraining bolt on him. I don't know why I found that so funny, because he had his helmet up so you could see it was Echo and he just had a restraining bolt on him.
I was very confused, like when Hunter sold him, I was like, oh, they're going to put a bolt on him. I was like, will it work? Like, has he got enough cybernetic things on him that were like messing with him a bit. Then next scene he's just got it on like his chest, and he's just like this clearly just there for decoration at that point.
Yeah, no, I liked it because I think not one of my complaints, but one of the things I sort of wanted, like from the series, I wanted Echo to be given some more things to do. And I do want him to have some sort of more like deeper character moments, and like I wanted to reflect back on Fives and all this sort of stuff. But I thought it was nice that they gave Echo a good bit of like comedy in this episode. Like, I think comedically he was the best part of the episode. Just his whole little bit, like, it was cheesy, but the right level of cheesy. And because it's Echo and he's always so serious, I just thought him just being lumped in a room with droids pretending to be a droid was really funny. And that was one of the bits of the episode I actually liked the most.
Yeah, and the guy offered Hunter 2,000 credits, and he was like, I'm worth more than this.
Yeah, that bit cracked me up as well. And then he was like 4,000. He was like, I'll give you 3,000. I'm just like, yeah, go on then.
That was a hard bargain.
Echo just been sold into slavery, basically.
Yeah, no, that did actually make me laugh. Yeah, that was a good little addition to the episode, I think.
And you know what? I'm gonna sideline into something I didn't like so much about the episode, because if on the lines of comedic relief, I wasn't very happy with what they did with Wrecker this episode. I'm going to be honest, John.
I agree, actually.
I think Wrecker is good comedic relief. He's funny, naturally funny all the time. But the big thing about his character is he's tough as hell. He's like the clone version of the Hulk. And then he finally gets to have a fight scene with Fennec Shand and then just instantly gets knocked out.
Yeah, he got done dirty.
I get that Fennec's meant to be a really good fighter and that sort of thing. We know that from The Mandalorian and stuff. But it's Wrecker. Like, he's genetically mutated to kick ass, and he just gets it handed to him.
And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, he's hit his head again. I was like, are they still leaning on this from last episode? Like, is this going to contribute to later on in the series with our theory of last week?
Yeah, I don't know anymore.
Next couple of episodes, is it just going to get whacked on the head like 4 times in a row, and then it's just going to get worse and worse?
Yeah, I really don't know. Like, part of me is now thinking that the whole thing with him having a sore head last week was just like comedy, and they didn't actually mean anything by it. I'm not sure. I don't know where they're going with Wrecker. I really want him to have, like, I like the bit last week with him like making the bed for Omega, and like, being that sort of like big brother sort of figure. I want them to really go there with Wrecker and give him plenty to do. But I just thought in this episode, it was like, right, tough guy lifts the engine parts out of the ship, goes to rescue Omega, gets all real tough, puts his helmet on, and then just gets beaten up. Like, I think he should have at least put on a little bit more of a fight. I mean, come on, he's Wrecker. Yeah,
no, I definitely agree. He should have. I think he should have shaken that off and at least landed a punch or two before getting sparked out.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that was one of the things I didn't like so much. I think the thing that I did find the most fun about the episode was the Attack of the Clones style speeder chase. It gave me real Attack of the Clones vibes from the opening speeder chase of Obi-Wan and Anakin. This whole chase on the speeder bike and the little ships and all that. I thought that bit was fun. I mean, it didn't, as we were talking about earlier, we don't need to keep on going on about it. It didn't do a huge amount to further the plot, but it was good fun. I liked the I'm going to remember the alien's name. I think they're called Aqualish. The Donnie who was piloting the ship, who had his headphones in. He was like listening to dubstep.
Yeah, man was surviving. He's going to get to his destination and be like, what on earth has happened here?
Like, I thought that was a funny little bit, and like some of the action was like pretty cool in that scene with like Hunter just like blasting Fennec out the sky with the little bomb thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Hunter's still a badass. I really like Hunter. But yeah, I enjoyed that chase scene. What were your thoughts overall on the chase?
No, I thought it was cool. Some great little action shots. Hunter, proving himself to be, like, to be fair, he was like the only one out of him and Wrecker who actually like managed to do anything against Fennec. So proving himself to be a bit of a badass. It was a cool scene. Some nice little flying abouts. I liked the bit with the bomb when he like got his bomb out from earlier and like put it on the back of her ship, sent her flying. That was cool.
Yeah. I thought it was quite interesting. I always like it in Star Wars when you see like local police, like you see the actual police from the planet, and it's not just like stormtroopers. So I thought it was quite cool seeing like the Pantoran police like chasing them and then just getting instantly blown up because they're useless.
Yeah, I thought that was actually quite interesting. I was watching that because we saw like I don't know 5-10 minutes beforehand, like the crowd were like cheering on the clone troopers that were on the planet.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting then to see the police, the local police, being like dealing with the chase scene instead of like the clones. It makes you think like that the Empire's still like slowly taking over, because obviously like when we watch like Rebels and stuff, like the only people that ever really dealt with what was happening on the planets were like the stormtroopers. So it's interesting to see that the local police were getting involved instead of the clones at this point.
Yeah, because that transition hasn't been like fully made yet. Yeah, I did think those the clones that they saw are looking worryingly close to stormtroopers at this point. I mean, they're looking more and more like stormtroopers and less like clones at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think since the first episode as well, or since Order 66, I don't think we've seen a clone in armor that has any color to it apart from like the Coruscant guards. They're all just straight plain white.
And then the black elite troopers as well, but they're sort of different category. Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't got any of that, personalization on their armor that they, had in the Clone Wars, stuff like that. It's just sad to see because they are looking more and more like stormtroopers as the episodes go on.
Yeah, it's very sad to see. What else? I mean, let's talk about Fennec, I guess. Positives. It was good to see Fennec, a younger Fennec. Good to see her back. I like her character in Mandalorian, so I'm happy to see more of her. It's good to hear Ming-Na Wen's voice, that she's doing the voice acting for it. Criticism, wasn't a fan of the animation of her face. I don't know, it like was really jarring. I almost thought it like didn't look fully rendered, like because it was cutting from her to Hunter, and like, Hunter's face is so like pristine and well rendered, and then it went back to Fennec, and it almost felt like they'd like done a half job on it. I don't know. Did you feel the same?
Yeah, I kind of get what you mean. Like when she took her helmet off for the first time, or like when we saw her without her helmet on, I was thinking like it kind of looks like the actress, but then it kind of just could have been like any person of like that similar heritage. I was like, it's just, especially because we've seen her in The Mandalorian, and we know exactly, and like she's quite a well-known actress. We know exactly what she looks like, and she's like quite iconic in because obviously she's a Mandalorian, and then like she's another like nerd culture shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I just didn't think it looked much like her, to be honest. I mean, not my favourite character.
Yeah, the thing that really took me back was it felt like season 1 of Clone Wars level of animation. Like, do you remember how Padme used to be animated? And it wasn't great, but you could recognise who it was, obviously, and it looked fine. But then you compare it to like what they're doing now, and it's like, right, okay, there's clearly been an improvement. But I didn't see it in that. I don't know if I've just completely missed the point. I don't know. When she had the helmet on, I was like, right, this looks sick. And then as soon as the helmet came off, I was like, whoa. So that does not look like Ming-Na Wen whatsoever.
No, I didn't think it looked much like her either. I'm not a fan of at the moment. Maybe it'll grow on me over time. I'll just have to accept it,
It's just that transition, isn't it, of getting used to characters that we know from live action in animation, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose you can say the same thing about Anakin, I suppose. He kind of looks like Hayden Christensen, but he kind of doesn't. I think the only one that's like, that I think my personal favourite animation, live action to animation, has got to be Obi-Wan. I mean, that man is fine.
Spitting image, yeah.
I mean,
I always remember Yoda and Rebels. I was really taken aback by that because that really didn't look good either.
No. I mean, I suppose it is animation because, I mean, Count Dooku's got like a face that's like 3 times as long as Christopher Lee. So
it's the longest face ever.
Yeah. So I suppose it is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah. But no, I thought like voice acting wise, like she was right back in character. I thought it was really cool. But yeah, I guess we'll talk about the whole bounty thing. So she's got a bounty puck out for Omega. It's not for the Bad Batch. It's just for Omega. So I think, as we were saying earlier, my theory is the Kaminoans have hired her to bring her back alive. Because throughout that whole fight, she was shooting at Hunter and all this stuff, but she was always like trying to save Omega and, say, oh, catching her when she's fallen off the edge and all this sort of stuff. So I do have a feeling that it is just a capture alive, and it's the Kaminoans who want Omega back for their secret cloning project that they were talking about last week.
Yeah. I think another big thing is why it makes me think it's not the Empire is that she's never been one of those bounty hunters that we've seen them use on a regular basis. They always seem to use the same ones. So obviously you got Boba Fett, Bosk, and who's that droid? His name is that IG-11. All the ones we've seen.
I think it's IG-88. I think he's 88. Yeah.
All the ones we saw in Empire. In that little lineup.
Yeah, it's the little lineup in Empire. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones that they tend to use on a regular basis. In the films and the cartoons and the comics and the books, they go back to them because they're reliable, and she's never been one that we've seen the Empire use, so I'm assuming that she's picked up a contract from somewhere.
Yeah, and in Clone Wars, Sidious used Cad Bane, Aura Singh, the likes of them. So yeah, I think you're right. I also think that whilst Fennec is a pretty nasty piece of work, I also do think she has a slight moral compass as well. So I feel like she's the sort of bounty hunter who would turn down a contract if she thought it was a little bit too dodgy.
Yeah, I feel like, if the Empire wanted her to go and kill a kid, she'd probably turn it down. I feel like there's other bounty hunters. I think Bosk is probably the bounty hunter. He'd probably go for that. That man's a savage.
Yeah, Bosk wouldn't just kill anything.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I don't think she'd pick up a contract where it was murder. I don't know how old Omega is, 10.
Yeah, but I can imagine her picking up a contract which was bringing alive a little 10-year-old girl. So I think it's good that we've got her there. Obviously, the episode sort of left us on a bit of a who is she speaking to on the other side of her. I can't remember the name of it. Comlink, that's it. My guess would be the Kaminoans. I'm assuming that's probably your guess as well. Mm-hmm. We shall see where that goes. But it's nice that they've got another sort of antagonistic figure chasing them now. So obviously the Crosshair is going to be on their tail. Tarkin, obviously, running the whole thing. He's on their tail. There's this elite trooper team, and then you've now got Fennec Shand. So it is good that they've got more and more people after them, which is hopefully going to create some tension and some good fight scenes. Have you got? I don't know if I've got any more thoughts on the episode. Have you got anything else you want to bring up?
No, I think that's it, actually. As I said earlier, it's not exactly. Wasn't as much to sink your teeth into this episode, so I think that's all I've got. Yeah,
I do want to give a special shout out to the little Sulliston guy with the toothpick, who's had the thickest New York accent.
Yeah, that's true.
Just at the beginning, getting tech to pay him, and then it was just it's just not enough. That was good. But yeah, that's episode 4 really. Not a huge amount of sort of Easter eggs or anything, big theories to talk about going forward. I'm hoping that we're gonna catch up with Rex fairly soon and get the plot moving again. But as I said, I don't mind these episodes when they're every now and then. I don't want 5 in a row and then a good finale. Do you know what I mean? You can have one and then we'll get the story moving again. If you want to chuck another one in further down the line, that's fine. But yeah, overall thoughts. I liked the episode, but I wasn't crazy about it. I thought it was the first one out of the 3 that I'm a bit all right, okay, I'll give you that one, but let's not have another one. Let's improve.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. Yeah, every now and again, it's fine. I allow it.
Yeah.
Don't want it on a regular basis. Yeah.
Right. So seeing that we've finished talking about that fairly quickly, we thought this week we would continue with our sort of fun top 5s that we were discussing back in episode 2 of the podcast. We went for a long list of top 5s. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode yet, give it a listen. It was good fun. but we thought we'd do top 5 lightsaber duels, one for live action and one for animated, because there's so many lightsaber duels. It's hard to, at least if we divide it into live action and animated, we get a bit more opportunity there. So we shall go through our lists, have a little discussion about them, and then that'll probably wrap up our episode. So do you want to go first, John, with your live action top 5 lightsaber duels?
Of course. I've chosen my top 5 on a basis of the ones that like, there's a couple in there like are just there because they look cool, and then there's a couple in there that aren't necessarily like the most spectacular fight scenes or like the most like energetic, but what they do for like the story and the plot is just, it's so iconic that you know it doesn't need to be them leaping about like crackheads. You know, the storyline behind these fights, I think, sometimes is more important.
Yeah.
So to kick off my list, we have Vader versus Luke in Return of the Jedi, which I think is one of the most obviously important story-driven fights in the whole of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So that's why that's made my top 1 position. And then number 2, Anakin versus Obi-Wan from Revenge of the Sith. Mm-hmm. A fight that looks cool and also is very essential to the plot and narration of the film.
Yep.
Number 3, Maul versus Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn in Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Again, that's a pretty badass fight, and obviously furthers the entire films from prequels, OG, trilogy, and sequels. Number 4 is Anakin versus Dooku from Revenge of the Sith. I really like that fight, actually. I know I get some hate from I think Dooku, obviously being Christopher Lee, is a bit stiff sometimes in his movements. And that front flip at the beginning is hilarious. But I do actually really enjoy that fight.
Some good memes in that fight as well.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that fight. And obviously, again, that's a great plot inducing fight for Anakin to turn to the dark side.
Twice the pride, double the fall.
Yes. And number 5, Finn versus FN2199. No, that's not actually my top 5, but that cracked me up when I was thinking about him earlier, right on the list. That cracked me up. Just traitor.
To be honest, I've done exactly the same view. I've put like 4 serious ones, and I've just put a joke one in at the end.
No, my actual 5th one I put was Luke versus Kylo from The Last Jedi. So I think that's a class fight, even though there's no
fighting
clashes. Yeah. It's if you actually think about it, it's one of the deepest and most profound fights in all of Star Wars.
Yeah, I do agree. Right, okay, so my top 5 is quite different, actually. I think I've got 2 the same and 3 different, which is nice. I've got number 1 is Luke versus Vader from Empire. For me, this is like, if someone says Star Wars, it's instantly what I picture is the carbonite freezing pit with Vader and Luke like standing up there with their lightsabers in the dark. Like, that's just so iconic. That fight, the ending of that fight, talk about story in that fight. This is Luke like going against what Yoda said to do and told him not to face Vader. He's facing Vader to save his friends, and then he gets his ass handed to him and then finds out he's his dad. So the whole thing is just mental. Beautiful fight. I love it so much.
Yeah, iconic.
And then my second one is Luke versus Vader in Return of the Jedi. For all the reasons you said, the story in that, the part when Luke just loses control and starts beating on Vader because Vader mentions his sister. The whole fight with Palp, the image when the lightsabers cross over Palp's face, the whole thing, that fight, it's just class.
Yeah.
Third one, Duel of the Fates from the Phantom Menace. I mean, I think in terms of choreography, I actually think this is probably the best choreographed fight in the franchise. There's a lot of badly choreographed fights in the franchise, but this is one of the ones I actually think is really good. Obviously Maul taking on the 2 of them, the different fighting styles, what it means for the story and the fate of Anakin and all that stuff. The music, it is a class fight. Although back in '99, it would have felt very different because obviously the lightsaber fights that people were used to in Star Wars were very much based off of like sort of like Japanese sword fighting, where there wasn't a lot of like banging swords together, because obviously when you sword fight, you don't bang swords together because that just damages your swords. It's, you know, it's a lot more of like slow fighting style, which is obviously what was big in the original trilogy. And then they got to the prequels and George was much more like slamming lightsabers together, fast paced. I think some people didn't like that, but I think we're so used to it now that that's sort of what we got used to, and I do love that fight. Number 4. Now, this is not my joke one. This is my actual entry at number 4. It's going to be controversial. I don't care. The throne room fight in The Last Jedi. I think visually this is one of the nicest fights in the franchise. I think the cinematography in it is stunning. Story-wise, just the 3 or 4 twists that happen in an instant there, I think is great. I think Kylo and Rey have completely different fighting styles, and just seeing them have at it with the, obviously it's not quite a duel because they're fighting, but you know what I mean, it's a big lightsaber fight.
Yeah.
And you know, I know you're going to get people like Sam Witwer who are like, oh, the choreography
is terrible.
Please watch Revenge of the Sith. Please watch Attack of the Clones. There has been terrible choreography in Star Wars for decades. Like, I bring up Palpatine versus Mace Windu, it's the worst choreographed fight in the entire franchise. There is like, choreography has never been the thing. It's been about story, and like this, in terms of story, I think is a brilliant scene. Visually looks really cool, and I think the music and everything, I really like it. And then my 5th one, if I was being completely honest, it would be Obi-Wan versus Anakin for all the reasons you've said. However, I do think that fight is slightly overrated, and the memes, as much as I love the memes, do sort of take out of it a little bit for me by the time I watch it. So the answer that I've actually given in my top 5 is Yoda versus Dooku from Attack of the Clones.
Yoda versus Dooku.
When I was
leaping about.
When I was a kid, I loved that scene so much. I got so gassed, like seeing Yoda just like whip his lightsaber out, and the dialogue between Yoda and Christopher Lee. You know, the whole like equal. What was it like? Our powers equal with the Force, but we should test it with a lightsaber. Don't know the line off by heart, but that whole bit, and then Yoda pulls it out slowly and just leaps all over the gaff. Oh, it's ridiculous. It's hilarious, but it is one of my favourites just for pure entertainment reasons.
No, it's a cool fight, I suppose. Especially Yoda like enters the room like with his little cane, like a little old man, and he whips out his lightsaber and he's like leaping about like a madman.
And it's particularly because you've just seen Dooku just completely outduel Obi-Wan and Anakin, and then Yoda, this like little green bloke, old man with a walking stick, just wanders in and then just beats him up.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, when you find out more about like Yoda and Dooku's relationship, obviously like Dooku was Yoda's Padawan back in the day. Like, the meaning in that fight is actually quite big. So it is a bit of a joke answer, but also in a bit of a way, it's a serious answer as well. So yeah, those are my live action lightsaber duels or fights.
No, it's a good list, to be fair. I mean, I get the Last Jedi one. It is nice. I think if they just added in some Force abilities, you know, like in The Rise of Skywalker, when is it Rey swings at Kylo and he like freezes her lightsaber with the Force?
Yeah, I think so.
They added some of that in there, like, because they added some of that in there, that'd been class, actually.
Yeah, I think my favorite bit is like, you know, the bit with the hand catching the lightsaber and then like the music kicks in. I just think that bit cinematically is so pleasing.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually.
I mean, I understand that people faff about people missing their timing and all of this, and I just don't care. I just don't care. I really don't. Like,
fair enough.
And you know, people will say what they want to say about what the best versions of like lightsaber fights in Star Wars is. It sort of the prequels, very fast-paced version, or is it the original trilogy, slower paced, more intense, standoffy version? Me personally, I prefer the more sort of intense standoffy version. I mean, as you can see by my first and second choice. But then I also like the leaping all over the place and doing ridiculous stuff as well. So
yeah, I think leads nicely into the animated ones, because they are very much more and leaping about and intense fights and
and
all that sort of stuff.
If we're talking about choreography, arguably all the best choreographed fights outside Duel of the Fates are all in animation. In Star Wars. So yeah, you go first, John.
Okay. My number one is actually, I think my number one is like my favorite lightsaber fight across the whole Star Wars, just because the amount of emotion I get from this is just unbelievable. And it's Ahsoka versus Vader in Twilight Apprentice.
Yeah.
At the end of that arc, that gets me every time when Ahsoka breaks open Vader's mask and all you hear is the OG Anakin voice going, Ahsoka. It gets me every time.
Yeah.
And a little dialogue afterwards.
I really need to rewatch it, to be honest. It's on my list. I need to get it rewatched because, it hits in the feels, that one.
Yeah. And then number two, again, this is one of those very similar to, I suppose, the standoffy ones we were just talking about in like the original trilogy, which is more, it makes the lightsaber fight more of like a chess game than like an actual like brawl. And that's Maul versus Obi-Wan in Twin Suns. There's like 3 moves maybe in this fight, 3 or 4, but once you realize like what's actually happening like in each other's heads and like how and what the story is they're trying to tell you in this fight, it's just magical.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most underrated fight in Star Wars. Like, I think people who say that fight was like not a proper lightsaber fight, I'm like, you just don't understand what's going on. That's such an intense like mind game between the two. It's like a cross between like a game of chess, like cowboy shootout, and then like a Japanese sort of samurai standoff. Like so many different inspirations. Great.
Yeah, it's so good. And to be fair, and then the next 3 are more mental fights, just because they're fun. So number 3 is Obi-Wan versus Maul and Savage, where he takes both of them on and like cuts off Savage's arm at the end. It's just class. It just shows off how skilled Obi-Wan is as a duelist. It takes on Maul, who is like one of the best, lightsaber duelists in Star Wars, and then he takes on Savage as well. It's just like an absolute brute.
Yeah.
But the fact he managed to take them both on at the same time and come out alive and dismembering Savage is unbelievably impressive.
His defense is just
Form 3 master Obi-Wan.
He is, yeah. He's the GOAT.
Number 4 is Maul and Savage versus old Sheev Palpatine. When Palpatine just shows up and just absolutely murks both of them, kills Savage and makes Maul beg on his knees.
One of my favorite scenes in like Star Wars history, hands down. I love it. So good.
It's so good. The fact that Palpatine, we just said Obi-Wan held his own against Maul and Savage, but Palpatine absolutely wipes the floor with both of them at the same time, while like laughing most of the time. He's enjoying himself while he's having to fight these two. It's unbelievable. And then number 5 is a bit of a rogue one, actually. Like, this one popped to mind where I was really struggling to think of like another one to put on my list. And this is Anakin and Obi-Wan versus Dooku in season 6. It's when they're like fighting on the ramps at the end of on the what's that crime syndicate that they're fighting? They're all against.
I think it's the Pikes, because they're looking for
the Pikes.
They're looking for Sifo Dyaz's like crash ship, or they find his crash ship, and they're like following the trail. Yeah. What
I love about that fight is just it shows off how good Dooku is as just a duelist. He's one of the best duelists that was in the Jedi Order, and ever since leaving and joining the Sith, I think he just takes it even further. Like the way he just sort of plays with Anakin and Obi-Wan, and like Anakin's as a character is very aggressive in his lightsaber fights, and obviously Obi-Wan's very defensive and with their forms. And the way that Dooku manages to like flip it and like gets Anakin to be very defensive and Obi-Wan to be more aggressive, to them just like play around with them, I think it's just so good. And the way he's like flipping and leaping around and like just able to take both of them on at the same time, it's so cool. Yeah,
Dooku's ridiculous in like some of his fights. Like I was trying to remember like all the lightsaber fights we see Dooku in the Clone Wars, and there's a lot of them. yeah, it didn't make my lists, but I kind of definitely be in like 6th or 7th place. Some of Dooku's fights. That's a strong list, John. I like that. I think you're going to be kicking yourself because I think there's one that you've forgotten, which you're probably going to kick yourself about. We'll get to my list. So my number 1 is Palps versus Maul and Savage. That's my favorite animated lightsaber duel. I think just it's the whole build up as well. Just watching Palp just like slowly like walk towards them and like just the choreography, everything. It's just ridiculous. And as he said, the fact that he just slaughters Savage and leaves Maul like begging for his life. Like, it's just because of Revenge of the Sith, and I'm sorry to say it, because of how crap the fight is with Palp and Windu. And then like the bit with Yoda's slightly better, but you still don't quite get this idea of like this is the most powerful Sith Lord, you know, and all this sort of stuff that you hear about Palps. But then you see the fight in The Lawless in season 5 of Clone Wars, and you're like, right, I get it instantly. You just instantly know why that guy is the boss. You know, fighting with the dual lightsabers and his whole style, the way he swings. Oh, it's unreal. Such a good fight. My next one is Twin Sons, Maul versus Kenobi, for all the reasons that we were talking about earlier. I just love that fight so much. I think that episode as a singular episode might be my favorite animated episode ever. It's between that and The Lawless that I just talked about. That fight, the meaning behind it, the fact that Kenobi is almost like not wanting to fight him at all until Maul's like, who you like protecting something or someone, and then as soon as he says someone, you just see the light on Kenobi's face of him turning on his lightsaber. It's as soon as he knows that Maul knows about Luke, he's like, right, this guy's dead.
I think I'm just going to add you about that. So I forgot to mention earlier is that once Obi-Wan like strikes down Maul, it's only then that Maul was like, he's like, is he the chosen one? And Obi-Wan's like, yeah, and he's like, he will avenge us. I think it's then that Maul realizes that he's been played his whole life, and it's like that's why I think Obi-Wan's like cradling him in his arms, because him and Maul both realize that he's a victim, and like all the horrible things he's done is because of how he was treated by Palpatine and like how Palpatine's manipulated him. And it's only then that Maul realizes that his whole life is like just been worthless.
Yeah, exactly. I think that bit's so deep as well. Like when you actually deep the fact that his entire life has just been, you know, as you said, worthless. He's just been used by this Dark Lord of the Sith his entire life. He's been chopped in half and put back together again and all this stuff because of Sidious and replaced and, you know, attacked and blah, blah, all of this. So, yeah, I think that's a really good point there. It's like that final moment, you know, he will avenge us. Yeah, it's intense. My third one, which is I think the one that you're not going to kick yourself for forgetting, because I know you're a big fan, is Ahsoka versus Maul, the Siege of Mandalore fight.
Yeah, that is a great fight. And I do love that fight. I knew it was going to be on your list as well, so I didn't feel so bad having it on mine.
Okay. I didn't know if you'd just like forgotten about it, and I was like, why has John forgot about that?
Of course not. I dream of that fight. That thing's class.
Yeah, I just think that fight is so well like choreographed. Obviously, like that fight was different because they actually filmed that fight with like real life performers and then translated it to animation. They actually got Ray Park, the original Maul, in to do the fight-in for Maul, so it looked like Maul fought in the Phantom Menace. Just good. Everything about that fight, just the what was going on between like Maul and Ahsoka, with, you know, Maul essentially just being like, "I'll become my apprentice and we'll destroy Sidious," and all this sort of stuff. There's just so much going on there, and Ahsoka's just a badass, and she just murks him, which he deserves. My fourth one is Ahsoka versus Vader, as you were saying, from season 2 of Rebels, Twilight the Apprentice. That fight is unbelievable. Not just the fighting, but the emotion, the raw emotion in it as well, what it represents, and the fact that, like Filoni said it like many times, like the whole point of that fight is to show that even Ahsoka couldn't have brought Anakin back from the dark side. It was only ever going to be Luke who was going to be able to save Vader. So yeah, very important fight, significant fight, good fight. And then my fifth one, it's not one that you've got, which I'm happy about. It is Kenobi and Ventress versus Maul and Savage, the little 2v2.
Yeah, that's a great fight, to be fair. it's funny seeing it wasn't funny. It's quite cool seeing Obi-Wan with a red lightsaber in that fight as well, because he borrows one of Ventress's, isn't he?
Yeah, I always like the fights when Ventress is involved. I think Ventress has got quite a fun fighting style, and like when you see her scrapping, it's good. And then that's the first time we see Maul fighting again since, well, Phantom Menace. I think like chronologically, I think that's the first time we see him fight since the Phantom Menace, because it's sort of when he's found and Savage brings him back from that wasteland planet. That's his first proper fight. And then obviously Savage being the brute, and the way that Obi-Wan sort of takes him on and Ventress backs up and all that sort of thing. I just think it's a really entertaining fight. So many like pieces moving about the board at once there. I think it's very visually impressive, and there's some good little like Kenobi quips in there as well. Like he's always quipping in the Clone Wars. There's a couple of them good ones in there. So yeah, that's my number 5. There's definitely so many that I've forgotten. I think I really like the fight with Ezra and Kanan versus the Grand Inquisitor. I think that's a really fun fight as well.
There's so many animated great fights that you could put on the list, like the Dooku versus Ventress and like her sisters, Night Sisters. That's class. The Dooku's like blind. That's a good fight.
And then there's like just before Twilight the Apprentice with like Ezra and Kanan fighting like the Inquisitors and Maul, and like when Kanan gets blinded, like there's all of that bit as well, which is pretty nuts. So there's a lot of good animated fights when you deep it really.
Yeah, the animation is definitely where the fights become their best, I think, which is obviously easier to do. You can't have like Alec Guinness leaping about. So that's fair enough.
Yeah. Although let's just because you mentioned that, I'm gonna bring up one of my picking points of the Star Wars fandom, and it's the reimagined Vader versus Kenobi fight. I don't like it at all.
Really?
And there's a reason why I don't like it. It completely misses the point of that fight. Like, that fight is not meant to be a fight. It's Kenobi distracting and taunting Vader and giving himself up so that Luke can escape, because Luke is the last hope that Kenobi thinks they've got, and he's spent his whole life trying to defend him. And in this moment, he's like, right, I've just got to give myself up, not just because it will let Luke escape, but because I'll become stronger as a Force ghost than I will as a man. And that fight for me is not meant to be like a big wailing lightsaber sort of thing. This is literally just like Kenobi being like, right, this is the end of my journey. Strike me down, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I like it for what it is, I suppose, but I do agree. And I don't think it portrays Obi-Wan's fighting style very well. Like, he is very aggressive in that fight.
Yeah, and that's never how Kenobi was.
No. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I'm pretty sure there's times when he like proper goes to like wail on Vader, and I don't think that's really how he fights. Like, he's more, he's a Form 3 master. He's more defensive and counter attacks.
You look at Anakin and Obi-Wan. That entire fight is just like Kenobi countering. Like, it's just Anakin wailing at him and Kenobi blocking, essentially. Like, it's just a little bone to pick. I think would that fight look better if Lucas made it today? Probably, of course. But I also think Lucas would get carried away and he'd try and make that fight something bigger than it needed to be. Because for me, that was never the point of that. That was in a mythical story. That's the grand old wizard giving his life so the new knight can escape. That was Gandalf doing "You shall not pass" on the bridge of Khazad-dûm so Frodo can escape. That was what that scene signifies to me. And obviously Alec Guinness was not fit to be doing it. And the big Obi-Wan and Vader fight that everyone wants to see, they're going to get to see in the Disney Plus series anyway. So let's leave what's perfect. Just don't touch it, and then make something new.
I agree.
That's probably about everything that we planned to discuss for this episode.
Yeah, there's a fun little discussion there at the end with the lightsaber duels. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that you put Luke and Kylo Ren on there because I really like that scene. But as someone who's not as much of a fan of The Last Jedi, I didn't expect you to put it on there. But I thought it was a good choice. I respect that fight.
I think it's very good for Luke's arc, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it fits very well in. I think it shows Luke's journey as a Jedi, because obviously in the original trilogy he is very, obviously his fights with like Vader and stuff, he's very aggressive and stuff.
Yeah, reactive and aggressive. Yeah,
I think that shows how further he's come in like his Jedi training, like not just being a fighter, but being a protector.
Yeah, and I think let's just make this one little point and then we'll wrap up, because Return of the Jedi ends with Luke winning because he refused to fight. And I think for me, that was a massive moment of Luke being like, right, being a Jedi isn't like a true Jedi doesn't want to fight. And I think that's one of the issues that I have with like the prequel era. As much as I love the prequel era, the Clone Wars era, is it's so much about Jedi fighting. Whereas the whole point of Jedi is they're not supposed to want to fight. Mm-hmm. And Luke realizes that at the end. He's like, I'm not going to win this by fighting. I'm going to be a proper Jedi and not fight. And as much as I absolutely adore The Mandalorian, as much as I adore that final episode with Luke appearing, killing all the Dark Troopers, and they're Dark Troopers, they're robots, they're not people, so it's different. So much as I love that and it's epic, it did feel a little bit like Luke just concluded his journey to being a Jedi by deciding he didn't need to be like a big brute fighter. And then we go straight into like 5 years later and he's just gone back to that like really aggressive. But then I guess it wasn't aggressive. It was very thought out and balanced, that fight of his. So I don't know. I do want them to do more with Luke, and I hope we see some stuff, but I also don't want them to do this whole OP Luke thing that like Star Wars fans seem to want. Like that's never been the point of Luke. Luke has always won because of his ability to love and care for people, not because he was some big fighter. Yeah. Which is why I do, like you said, I actually really like that fight at the end of Last Jedi, because he realizes that to win, he has to be the legendary Luke Skywalker that the galaxy wanted him to be, and he decided not to be. So he has to be that to inspire, but then he also wins in the most like Jedi way ever by not actually fighting. So I think that's like, for me, and I know a lot of people disagree, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their agreements and disagreements. But I think that's why I really like that Luke moment. I think so. I like the comics at the moment, because you actually, if you want to see like Luke just scrapping people, you get a lot of that in the comics, because it's before Return of the Jedi. So it's before Luke has reached that point in his life where he's like, I need to not fight anymore. So yeah. Right. Should we wrap it up there? Any more thoughts, John? Anything else to add?
I'm all good for this week.
Lovely stuff. So we shall be back next week for episode 5 of The Bad Batch. And I believe, if I'm right in my maths, I think we've got our book club will be next week, won't it? So 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, that'll be it. 4 weeks. Yeah. The 29th.
Yeah. That'll be a fun little discussion.
Yeah, next Saturday we will be discussing Light of the Jedi, the first High Republic book. So we'll warn you at the time, it'll be very spoiler filled, obviously. But if anyone has read the book in the past or this month when we mentioned it, send us in your thoughts on our Instagram or Twitter. Just DM us whatever you think of the book. I'll probably put one of those Q&A things up on the Instagram story next week before we record. So if anyone's got any thoughts, they can drop them in. And then we shall discuss that after we've discussed episode 5, The Bad Batch, next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
Lovely stuff. Right, we'll wrap it up because John's got to get away to work. He's a working man.
I'm a hard grafter.
And I'm going to the pub because I'm a hard grafter as well. Right. Thank you for tuning in to episode 7 of Live from Vaders Castle. I've been your host, Dan, and John has been your other host, John.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.